it's Rebecca. Welcome to Returning, a podcast to return to yourself and the wisdom within. I'm so glad you're here with me. Thanks for returning. In today's episode, I'm looping you in on a conversation I've been having a lot with a lot of my mum friends and also non-mum friends too. And yeah, this conversation really explores the portal of birth, and how deeply it changes us, and therefore how our children experience us in such different ways. You don't have to have physically given birth for this inquiry to apply to you. You don't have to have kids for this to apply to you, because we have all been children ourselves. You just have to have been born. And so if you're listening to this, I'd say that's you. We all came from a birth. Which, don't get me started on that. It's one of the greatest mysteries there is, and one of the most amazing things there is, how we're born and what that actually means. But I will not digress into that right now. I'm a big believer that the conditions of our birth, our experience of being in utero, and even the conditions of the inner world of our mums and the outer world as well, can potentially leave an imprint on us. And so it's kind of like these early experiences we have can influence us, just like our experiences through our life influence as well. Questions like, do I feel safe? Do I feel seen? Do I feel welcome? Do I belong here? Do I feel wanted? Do I feel loved? And in a way, the question really is like, do these early experiences, do they really set up a blueprint for us that result in us spending the rest of our lives asking these same questions? So yeah, how much do those early experiences of us as babies and experiencing our families and surroundings, how much does that really influence us? So what I have noticed myself since becoming a mum for the second time is just how different a mother I am to my two kids. And I mean that as in how different I was when I had my first baby to how different I was when I had my second. And I'm only 6 months into my second child, and even in those 6 months I can see how much I've changed. And just really reflecting on the truth that my son and my daughter really had different mums when they were born. And so that's what I'm exploring in this episode. And obviously, my mum, the same would go with her. And so I think it's a really, really interesting inquiry to have. And yeah, it's been so interesting talking to so many of my friends about this too, both people who have children and who don't as well, and are children themselves, particularly children of a family with more than one child in it. At the end of this episode, you'll, as always, find a guided soul inquiry for you to explore what your own inner wisdom has to say on this topic. I know how precious your time is, so let's jump right into sacred space together now. In the center of your heart, imagine a beautiful flower. Invite it to open petal by petal, revealing a light in the middle. This light is your wise inner self. Invite it to step forward now. And taking another deep breath in and acknowledging the keepers and custodians of the land where you are and where I am too. Beautiful, let's begin. So in today's episode, I want to talk a little bit about something I've been talking a lot about with my mum friends, and actually not just my mum friends, my friends in general. And that is this realization that my kids, my son and my daughter, actually have two completely different mums. I am their mum, but the person I was when I had my son is just so completely different to the person I was when I had my daughter. There's only like 3 years and 2 months in between the two of them, but they really do have had a completely different mother when they were born. I think this is probably true for most people who've had more than one child. Yeah, and I wonder if it is the case, particularly from the first to the second. I've only got two, so maybe it continues on and on and on the more you have. But I think particularly with the first, generally speaking, and I can only talk from my experience, of course, and my friends and loved ones who have shared their experiences with me. But when I had my son, I was just so much more anxious and just like doubting my ability as a mother, constantly thinking like, am I doing it right? Am I getting it wrong? And I think that kind of, I guess in a way, like a lack of confidence can really be felt. When I reflect on having my son, I was 38. I'd just turned 38, and it was a couple of months before the whole world went through its own kind of death and rebirth and big healing vortex through the global pandemic. I remember when he was born, there were fires raging all around the world, and I think we could all sense that something was coming. I think we officially went into lockdown in March, and so for Sunny, it was really like I didn't have any support. I didn't have people around. And I think that lack of support can totally be felt. If I compare that to having my daughter, by the time I had my daughter, I was just such a different person. I'd been through such a deep, dark night of the soul and had started to kind of come back. I'd done so much work on healing my nervous system through various different modalities, in particular somatic work. And I did a lot of that actually while I was pregnant with her. So it was almost like we were doing it together. And my greatest wish was that when she would come into the world, that her nervous system would be regulated and mine would be too. And it's one of the things I'm most proud of, healing that in my system, in my body, and hopefully not passing it on to her. When I reflect back on the birth of my son, I was really proud at how that went. And I think on paper, it was a positive birth experience, even though it was extreme, very, very extreme, very painful as well. But I had a home birth for both of them. But the way I approached the birth, and I think it is like it's a collaboration with the child. It's not like it's just you doing it, that's for sure. But yeah, the way I birthed Sunny was my kind of like old warrior woman approach, where it was very fast, which I think is his personality type as well. And it was as if I was just like trying to get through the birth as quick as I can. And he came out, he was in his little, they call it end-call, in his amniotic sac still, like the water didn't even break. And it was very fast, very intense. During the labor, I really saw like the gates of life and how close together birth and death are. In the months after, I was just so sensitive, so open. And I think I am sensitive and open compared to the average person anyway. But have been going through to experience postpartum, which is definitely a sensitive and open time. On top of that, made it a little bit more extreme. And on top of that, it was a time where the world was sensitive and open. And I think that really, really, really affected things. For me, I felt way more sensitive and open than I could have ever possibly imagined. I felt very tapped into the wisdom, codes of life, the mysteries of life. I remember as I was nursing him, I was really called to listen to Ram Dass, and it was just before Ram Dass actually passed, so that was really interesting. And books such as like the Tibetan book of the dying, I think it's called, but really, really deep in the mysteries of birth and death and what is this life? What happens when we go? And when I look at my son, he is definitely a big feeler. He's a sensitive. Like me, he's got Venus in Scorpio, so he doesn't do things in halves. and his moon is Cancer as well, so he's quite a homebody, and like all of the COVID babies, he barely left the house for his first year. And so, it was a time of global stress and anxiety and worry and mystery. And that was the time that I became a mother as well. And so it was really an extreme time. Then cut to 3 and a bit years later when Goldie arrived. Her birth was really incredible. It took a lot longer, and it was the lesson in the birth. And I think that, again, I think it is a co-creative experience. Like, it's not just the mother who's birthing, it's the two together. And during that birth, which again, it's easy to describe it as, it all went to plan. And I think no matter how it goes to some sort of plan. Who knows if that's the baby's plan or the body's plan or the world's plan. But when I was in labor with Goldie, my real wish was that it was calm and that she was calm and it wasn't an emergency. The lesson that started emerging for me that birth really taught me was, it made me see my tendency to try and push through things, like as in like to push through the difficulty so that I can get the job done. And then once it's all over, then I can relax. Then I can, just take some time to enjoy myself, to enjoy the sweetness of life. And what that labor taught me was, it was this constant invitation to find a way to enjoy the sweetness through all of the extremes of life. So like through the contractions, how can I like be here? How can I see this as like this amazing container that me and my daughter are in? And I remember through that night, I went into labor. So Sunny came like within 4 and a bit hours from when the active labor started. And as I said, my water didn't break, so I knew I was in active labor when I was in active labor, but I didn't know that it was definitely coming. So it progressed really, 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 really fast. It was that warrior woman in me, like, get the job done. Whereas, with Goldie, I got quite upset with myself because we ended up calling the midwives, or the midwife, and she lived quite far away, like about 3 hours away. And so, she was like, should I come? And we weren't quite sure if she should or not, but we were like, if Sunny's birth is anything to go by, like the baby is coming now. And I don't know if it was because I had a toddler who was running in and out and, I needed to get him to bed and all of that. But the labor progressed, and then it subsided, and then it progressed, and then it subsided. And it was this dance of like, it's happening, it's not happening, it's happening, it's not happening. And I got really frustrated at myself. And interestingly, that it was at myself, because it felt like I wasn't getting the job done. And I really noticed this character trait in me to feel like I should push through to get something complete. And as I was in that portal of like, she was literally birthing me as well as her, as well as me, her, I realized that the invitation was to find a way to open through the pain and find the sweetness in this moment. And so I ended up in our spare room, and my husband put the fire on through the night. And I had my birth playlist on, which is really just kind of beautiful chanting type music, bhakti. It's my bhakti playlist, but I created a special birth playlist that was basically the same as my bhakti playlist that some people I've shared before. And there was this one song by Krishna Das that started just playing on repeat. And I think it's like a 12-minute song anyway, so it's like a long song. That just kept on playing over and over again. And it's a goddess chant. But then in the second part of the song, it shifts gears, and it's a combo of like a goddess mantra with that song, I want to know what love is, I want you to show me. Oh, and yeah, through the night, that song kept on playing on repeat, and it felt like she was kind of like singing this to me and I was singing it to her. And the closest thing that I can kind of explain that it was like really sensual and really intimate, but in that same way as like the Sufis, like Hafiz and Rumi speak about like the union with the beloved within. And that's how it felt all night long. Like as the contractions came in, it was like this invitation to, rather than push through, to open and like truly be in that moment. And yeah, there's never been any moment like it. And when I reflect back, then the next day the contractions subsided a little bit, and until my son went off with my mum and dad, his grandparents, and we were about to go to bed again. And then it really, the labor began very, very intensely, and it was incredible. I had an independent midwife, and my friend Binny, who is like, birth is her game, and so her and the midwife arrived with my doula, and they just started breathing. They were so hands off, and like I was so in the zone, I barely even looked up. And yeah, it progressed so fast. My husband was there, and we experienced this kind of like golden light showering down on us, hence her name Goldie. And then my waters broke like very near the end of the active labor. And yeah, the doula then said, I think you should get in the pool now. And I did. And literally in my first birth, I remember like waiting to ask for permission to push, because I knew you weren't meant to push until you know it's time to push, or you can't push anymore. That's what they say. But I got in the water, and I was so in my power. And I think this is the difference of the two as well, like the difference of the mothers that birthed them. With Sunny, I was powerful in the birth, and I did feel empowered, but I still waited to be like, is it time yet? And I think that is the case, because you haven't done something before, so how could you possibly know? And yet as a woman, your body does know. And I think this is the complicated thing around birth, because particularly in the West, it's as if like doctor knows best, but women have been birthing since people began, right? I mean, I don't know who came first, the baby or the mother, but babies have been birthed since humanity began. And so, you know, the more that we can protect that and honor that, I think the more powerful we can be as mothers, or as birthing beings. But anyway, so I got in the water with Goldie, and yeah, I didn't ask for permission to push. I could just tell her. My husband was in front of me, and he was, you know, settling in, thinking it was going to be like, you know, at least a few hours until she came. And I could just feel this surge of her coming. I didn't ask permission to push. I just knew I needed to, and I did. And literally she came out all the way to her waist, like in one huge go. I was relieved that she did, because, oh my God, I felt like every part of me was exploded open to the ends of the universe. And yeah, Binny, who was at the birth, she caught Goldie, because she came out with such force. She would have like hit her head at the base of the pool. And it was so amazing. Like I really took my time and let her be under the water for minutes. It was incredible. And I remember the song that was playing at the time, it's a Ben Harper song, which is so beautiful. How could we not believe? And yeah, all of us just gazed at her in awe as, she just kind of floated under the water, still obviously attached to me through the umbilical cord. And then she came up and just really took me in, and I really, really savored the moment with her. Is the most beautiful moment. And yeah, she didn't cry for, I don't know, like 20, 30 minutes. It was amazing. It was the most gentle, peaceful moment of my life. If I compare that to my son coming out, it was like amazing, him being in his water sack still, but there was a little bit of like stress around it because like as I gave birth to him, my body came out of the water, and so it was like, oh, I don't think we can go back into the water. And because I had been diagnosed with gestational diabetes, and so there was like worry about like getting his like blood sugars up and all of that. And so it was just like a lot of stress straight after him being born, even though it was incredible. And yeah, if I reflect back, like the portal that felt like we opened together, which continued on at such an intense time, was just so, so unique. But he definitely got me at my most deep, which means, I struggled a lot postpartum, and I also felt so connected to the gates of life, the codes of life, like as a spiritual teacher and a mystic. Those months postpartum with the two of us, and again, it might be his soul, I can't even express, and I felt tapped in like I've never been tapped in before. Whereas, yeah, with Goldie, the postpartum period has been much more physical. She got diagnosed with hip dysplasia, and so she had to have a harness on, and I had and have had pelvic issues since, and so it's almost like the two of us have been really working on the physical, whereas with Sunny it's felt more on the spiritual and the soul. He took me to the depths, that's for sure. Yeah, Goldie feels like she's bringing me into the physical even more. But yeah, I've spoken to a few of my mum friends about this concept of like how different we are each time we have our babies. And and also just like I remember like doing with people I've worked with who have, I think we all have like mother or father issues or family childhood stuff that comes up, and how common it is for children and adults to reflect back on their childhood and see parents and see the childhood experience in like quite differently. Like the same person can be viewed quite differently, and obviously that's through our lived experience and personality type and soul experience and path and all of that. But I think it is as well because we came into the world, and and this is assuming that our parents did raise us, obviously, like our carers, if we didn't physically give birth, it's the same scenario arises here of even if it is the same person who's caring for you and mothering you or fathering you or whatever title you want to give it, as we're ever-changing beings living in an ever-changing world, and we're constantly changing. We're never meant to be the same. We're even just at a cellular level, we're completely changing. I think it's like every 7 years, is it? But we're different people as we change through life. And so, yeah, we can't possibly be the same mother or father or brother or sister or whatever it is to our siblings or to our children. So, yeah. And then if I reflect on it from a soul perspective, then I'd say, well, one lens to look through it is that the child, the soul chooses the conditions that they come in on. I mean, I don't mean to say that to bypass difficulty. I'm certainly not saying that. But in the context of, if I look at my son and my daughter, even my experience of them in the womb before they came into this world, the sense of them and their spirits was just so different, so unique. And so I guess the invitation I've been giving myself, rather than being like, oh, I wish I wasn't like that with my first, or I wish I was more like this, or whatever. The invitation I'm giving myself is perhaps the soul chooses the state that the mother is in, and perhaps as we change over time and through our lives, perhaps we are the perfect mother or father or sibling or whatever it is for the path that soul has chosen. That's what I'm choosing to explore and feel into. So yeah, I'm curious what you think, if you've had a similar experience of feeling like you're just such a different person, if you've had more than one child. And perhaps also, like, if that isn't the case, then if you have siblings, like maybe that can ease a bit of healing if you're struggling with recovering from childhood stuff, particularly like attachment wounds, perhaps. Anyway, they are my ponderings, and yeah, certainly not advice, but rather just sharing my experience, sharing some of the things that I've been talking about with my loved ones, my friends who are on this journey with me. And yeah, of course we are too. So if it resonated, take what does and leave the rest. Soul inquiry is a practice where we enter into a direct dialogue with our inner self. I like to write my answers down, but feel free to speak them or just put your hand on your heart and receive the wisdom within now. So today's soul inquiry prompt is, what does the child within you need to hear today? What does the child within you need to hear today? It's time to commit to a grounded action. And so writing down, what is one baby step you can take in that direction? What is one baby step you can take in that direction? And let's share a deep breath together as we close this sacred space we've stepped into. I'm so grateful for you being here with me. If you'd like to keep returning to yourself and returning here with me, then hit subscribe. If you love this podcast, leaving a review or 5-star rating really, really helps others find it too, and I really appreciate it. So thank you if you can do that. As always, you can find the show notes from today's episode over at rebeccacampbell.me/podcast.